Wow. Is it my turn already? I was actually over there having a good time. So, so let's have a good time together. I first thank Reverend Richard for the invitation to be here and to speak. I'm grateful to Danielle for helping me to get set up and for everyone here that's been instrumental in getting me set up here and bringing me here. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the love that you all have shown me, and I look forward to interning here and growing with each of you over the next several months. Now, there was a story of a young woman who was trying to teach her son about having the right perspective. So as he was drinking his glass of milk and got halfway through the glass, she told him, "See, son, having the right perspective and seeing things the right way is to look at this glass half full and say that's a good thing, rather than seeing it as being half empty." The son turns to her and says, "But Mom, what if you don't like what's in the glass?" I love that story because it teaches us that two people can be looking at the exact same thing, but because of their perspectives, their beliefs, their emotions, because of their senses, they can see what some may see as good as being not so good. They can see a glass as being half full as being not great, and a glass as being half empty as being pretty good. And so today I want to talk to you about perspective, about seeing things differently. I'm going to read to you from the book of 1 Samuel. I'm going to read from the 17th chapter, verses 45 to 50, which reads from the New Revised Standard Version. "But David said to the Philistine, 'You come to me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This very day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. And I will give the dead bodies of the Philistine army this very day to the birds of the air and to the wild animals of the earth, so that all of the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and all that assembly may know that the Lord does not save by sword and spear, but for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand.' And when the Philistine drew nearer to meet David, David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet the Philistine. David put his hand in his bag, took out a stone, slung it, and struck the Philistine on his forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, striking down the Philistine and killing him. There was no sword in David's hand." Now, this passage can be seen as being kind of gruesome because David is declaring that he's going to kill the Philistines and give their bodies over to the birds. But if we look at the story from a slightly different perspective, we can see that it's actually about seeing things differently. To set the story up, David was a young 16-year-old boy, and the Israelites and the Philistines, who had been in war for centuries, were fighting in the valley of Elah. And whoever won this battle would actually take control over that entire region. Now, there was a giant named Goliath who was 9 feet tall, and he would go to the battle line and he would taunt the Israelites. He would say, "If you can kill me, the Philistines will bow down to you. But if I kill any one of you, then you will be subject to us." And so in fear, the Israelites did not move. Actually, they stayed lined up on the battle lines, not crossing them out of fear that they could not beat Goliath. Now, David was running an errand for his brothers, and he goes to the battle line, and side note, his brothers were actually in the army. And he goes to the battle line, and he sees Goliath talking all this smack. and he decides that he can be Goliath. Now, David comes in with a fresh perspective. He knew, because he hadn't been tainted by the opinions of others, that he could actually win the war because he could beat Goliath. So that sets us up right now in the story. I want to talk to you about seeing things differently, similar to what David did. Poet Oscar Wilde says that the optimist sees the donut, the pessimist sees the whole. Similar to David, we must understand that our perspective shapes the trajectory of our life. Our perspective, or our point of view, how we see things, determines whether or not we live a life of joy or pain. It determines whether or not we embrace our wholeness and our healing, or whether we succumb to sickness. It determines whether we live in abundance or lack. Our perspective is power. Say it with me. Say, perspective is power. Perspective is power. One more time. Perspective is power. So how do we change our perspective? I know we say that we should try to see things in a way that that's beneficial to ourselves, but it's very difficult sometimes just to see good when all that's in front of us is perceived as bad. So today I want to talk about how to change that perspective, how to move our lives into that next level. The first way we do that is to take inventory of the people that we are around. It's to possibly change our friends. The whole perspective of the Israelite army was that Goliath could not be beat. Now, I'm sure that there were some people in that army who came to the battle line and said, you know what, I might be able to beat him. But everyone else thought it was impossible. So eventually, being around them, they began to believe it was impossible. So therefore, no one decided to move up and attempt to actually begin the battle. But see, David wasn't tainted by their perspective. He came in with a new view. He saw it differently. There is a psychologist whose name was David McClellan, and he studied personality and consciousness for over 30 years as a Harvard professor. And he found that those that we spend the most time with are our reference group. And our reference group determines 95% of our successes and our failures. I invite you to take time and look at the perspectives of the people around you. As my mom used to say, you become who you hang around. And that's why if you don't remember anything else from what I'm saying today, take hold of this. Because I'm only talking to you for 20 to 25 minutes, but the people that you are around can influence you for 20 to 25 years. Sometimes we need to evaluate our friends, pay attention to who we are around, because just like the other Israelites, we take on their perspective. We take on their beliefs. We start to see things as they do. So first, we know that we might need to find new friends. Secondly, we understand that we should release judgment. In Matthew 7, verse 1, Jesus says, "Do not judge so that you won't be judged." And that simply means that when we judge one another, we are actually judging ourselves. This is because when we judge someone's reality, we're actually judging them against our own reality. Or when we measure someone, we're measuring them against our own lives. David looked at the battle and he chose to release judgment so that he could allow the Spirit of God to move in him. See, sometimes we're so quick to judge a situation or to judge a person that we edge out room for God, for Spirit to speak to us and say to us, this is the perspective that I want you to have. Maybe you should do it this way. Maybe you should think this way. But we're so quick to cast judgment that we've made up our minds. We edge out God. They often call that ego edging God out. But in order to actually see things differently, we must release our judgment. There's a story, a true story, of a blues musician named Daryl Davis. Now, Daryl Davis is a black man who had been playing the blues piano for, by now, about 35 years. He's still alive. And one day, when he was playing his piano, a white man comes up to him and says, "I never heard a black man play like that." And rather than taking offense to it, Daryl decides to sit down and talk with him. Daryl tells this man about all of the great black blues musicians and how blues actually came from black music. And he talks to him about Little Richard and about Fats Domino and other great artists. And during this conversation, the man tells him that he was a member, or is a member at the time, of the Ku Klux Klan. Rather than ending the conversation right there, Daryl felt like maybe I should allow him to get to know me, because he believed that you cannot hate who you do not know. So he felt that if he got to know him, then maybe it would change his mind. They developed a friendship, met many, many times, and eventually this man left the Ku Klux Klan. But Daryl believed that hate was bred from ignorance, and from ignorance came fear. And because of that, he began to befriend many other members of the Klan. He was so serious about it that he scheduled a meeting with the imperial wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, who's like the national chair. And during that meeting, they somehow, not initially, but by the end of the meeting, they began to find common ground. So much so that they continued to meet and eventually became best friends. Now, during the majority of their friendship, the imperial wizard was still in the Klan. He didn't leave. But that didn't stop Daryl. That was truly his friend. In fact, Daryl would be in the front of the Klan rallies with his friend, because he believed that even though we disagree, we still respect each other. His goal was to have his friend leave the Klan, but that didn't stop him from being there. Now, I'm not saying that to release judgment, you need to go to a Klan rally. But what I am saying is that we have to allow Spirit to move and allow Spirit to help us see things differently. Before his friend died, he eventually left the Klan. And as of today's date, Daryl Davis has, because of his influence, has caused 200 members of the Klan to disassociate themselves with the Ku Klux Klan. So we understand that we have to first evaluate those that are in our lives. Next, we must release judgment in order to see things differently. Third, we must understand that the battle is not ours. If we look at verse 47, David says, "The battle is the Lord's." That simply means that I'm not to figure this out. This is not my concern. This problem is not my issue. I don't take ownership of this problem. I have a friend whose name is Minister Tequila Scott. And Tequila was a great track runner in high school. In fact, even 25 years later, her records are still intact. No one's beat her. And she used to tell me that when she would run, she wouldn't concentrate on her competitor. In fact, it was like no one else existed. It was always a race against herself. She told me, and I quote, "You will never win a race concentrating on your competitor." And so I expand that to say, we will never win a battle concentrating on our enemy. We won't be successful concentrating on our failures. We won't live in abundance concentrating on our debt. We won't experience joy focusing on our pain. Now, I'm not saying that we're to completely ignore our mistakes or our failures or our competitors like they don't exist, but I'm saying we are to not focus on them. Because when we focus on them, we take back that problem. We take back that issue. We take back that concern. We take back that burden. But see, David was successful, was victorious, because he said, this battle is not mine. Meaning this issue is not mine. This concern is not mine. Rather than focusing on my enemy or my problem, I'm going to focus on the Lord, from which comes my help. Truly exercising our faith is understanding not that we just give our issues, our problems, our concerns, our hurts to God to fix, but is to truly say that these aren't even my problems, that these aren't even my concerns. If we can take anything that troubles us and give it to God completely and say that these are my concerns, we understand that God is abiding with us, that God rests with us, that any problem that we have, be it big or small, God is concerned about. So much so that God will take it completely as if it never existed. First, we understand that we have to evaluate our friends. Secondly, we must release judgment. Third, we understand that the battle is not ours. And last, we must see the truth of who we are. And we must know the truth of what's inside of us. David was successful because he was aware of who he was. When it was time for him to go into battle, when he decided that this was what he wanted to do, he went to King Saul, and King Saul said, "No, you are a boy, you cannot go." He continued to beg the king, and then the king was finally like, "Okay, you can go." And so Saul and his army put this big, heavy armor on this little boy, this young man, and it was so heavy for David that David couldn't really walk and move. You know, it makes us think about how sometimes when people are trying to protect us, they give us their burdens, their problems, their perspectives, their experiences, and it's so heavy, so burdensome on us that it keeps us from being who we truly are. Similar to how the members of the Ku Klux Klan convinced other members based off of what they believed, and then they had more members join. But in order to be who we truly are, we must recognize the God that's inside of us. We must recognize our true gifts and our true talents. Genesis 1:27 says that we are made in the image and likeness of God. That means that we are not physical beings, but we are spiritual beings. We are God in a skin or flesh suit. 2 Timothy 2:13 says that God will never deny us or turn its back on us because God cannot deny itself. We are simply manifestations of God. God is omnipotent, meaning that God is all powerful. God is omnipresent, meaning that God is everywhere. God is omniscient, meaning that God is all-knowing. God is infinite, meaning that there is no beginning or no end to God. And as manifestations of God, we have that same power in us. We have the ability to access that same omniscience. But we have to recognize that for ourselves, or else we'll become burdened by others' opinions and burdened by the beliefs from others. And it'll cause us to miss who we truly are and not see the picture correctly. I invite you to sit and pray and ask Spirit, if you're ever at a point where you're wondering, what's my role in this situation? What can I do? Who am I? Ask God to show you. Ask God to show you your power, show you your worth, and Spirit will do that. Spirit will put you in situations where you see how great you are. Spirit will bring people into your life to affirm the truth about you. So, to go back, first we might need to find new friends. Second, we need to release judgment. Third, we must understand that the battle is not ours, the battle is the Lord's. And fourth, we must know the truth about ourselves, which is that we are spiritual beings having an experience here on earth, that we are God beings here. Whenever there's something that is stressing you, I invite you to see it differently. Repeat after me, say, I will see it differently.
I will see it differently.
One more time, say, I will see it differently.
I will see it differently.
So when you are driving down the street and someone cuts you off, you say,
I will see it differently.
when you are dealing, or if you come upon a financial hardship, you say, if you get to a point where you are doubting yourself and who you truly are, you say, if you wonder about whether or not you can get through this situation, this circumstance, you say, and even if those around you have a perspective that does not align with who you truly are, you say, Namaste.